Thank you, Liz. Before I forget, there's fridge magnets up here for Central Australia about bits and pieces around the right time of year and the wrong time of year in relation to fire. So as Liz said, I moved my family up here about 2.5 years ago from Victoria, and have spent the last 2.5 years trying to do as much engagement as I possibly can to understand what all the land managers in Central Australia do when it comes to fire management planning. I did get a little bit worried this morning with a couple of presentations because I thought they were going to eat into a couple of my slides, but thankfully they didn't. And now my clicker doesn't want to work. Maybe it's gone flat. I reckon it's gone flat. So I was asked to talk about fire management with more of an ecological bent on the subject, but I guess if participants have questions about specific biodiversity relationships with fire, then please don't ask me. I'm a generalist when it comes to that, because my underlying opinion is that a cool planned burn at the right time of year under the right conditions with perhaps a 50 to 75% coverage is far better than a wildfire in the middle of summer taking out 100% of the landscape. And I think many in the room that have been around a few years will have seen those types of impacts. Next slide, please. So at the moment there's myself, Shane in the middle. Shane and I work together in Victoria. He's been here for coming up 18 months now. And Tim, who's currently on secondment down at Wataka with Parks, should be back at the end of the month. And currently I've got a vacant position in our engagement and preparedness area. Bushfires is broken up into 4 regions, Katherine and the top end, and we look after Alice Springs and the Barkly, which is about 2/3 of the territory. After the 2011-12 fires, which was the last bad fire season in Central Australia, that was preceded by 2002, and then back in the mid to late 70s were probably the 3 standout fire seasons in the last 2 generations, I guess. The report written in 2012 picked up on 4 key subject areas. One was a sub-regional approach, and over to the right was out of the report from 2012. We're just mucking around with that at the moment to work out what is the best approach for a sub-region. And my inkling at the moment is to line them up with police districts. There's 14 of those located across Central Australia, and the one that we're sitting in right now is Tea Tree. So I'll continue to work on that, and I'll continue to engage with some key stakeholders just to get their opinion, and then put together a report for consideration with my hierarchy. So if you've got any thoughts, come and see me during the day. There were 4 key recommendations. The first was to talk about better communications. So we need to make sure communication's better coordination. And that's, I guess, where bushfires comes in. We don't actually manage any land, which is a really interesting concept for me after 30 odd years in the public service in Victoria where we did manage land. In the territory, land managers manage their land, and we just hopefully help coordinate both a better response from a fire perspective and also coordinate a mitigation or planned burn program. Another key recommendation was that bushfires, and I'm going to add here Central Australia, probably wasn't prepared for a bad fire season in 2011. So I'm really keen to, again, through engagement, ensure that we are prepared for that fire season when it turns up. And again, that sub-regional approach. So I'm going to start with mitigation because I think mitigation is the key to lessening the impact of our fire seasons that we are going to have. So when I come out and visit, or when any of my staff come out to visit, whether it's a pastoralist, Parks, CLC, The question we're asking you is, what does the station look like after 2 successive years of above average rainfall? Because the fire seasons we've had in the past have been preceded by those two above average seasons. So we're not interested really, well, the last 3 years, we haven't really been interested in what the station looks like right now, because there hasn't been the amount or a concerning amount of fuel, I call it fuel, you call it feed, on the property to worry about having an above average fire season. So we're asking stakeholders, what does your land look like once you've had that rain? We are mapping that, so many stakeholders are saying to us, yeah, if we've got plenty of grass around, we need to do a bit of burning here, here and here. The adjoining stakeholder here and here, another stakeholder here and here. So within that sub-region, we'll end up with a map. This is really just a schematic example, but those orange and yellow areas you can see are potential areas that people have identified that they want to fuel reduce. And then what bushfires will do is go away and try to procure an aircraft to come in on contract to help with that work and then reduce the cost. So we might land in this sub-region, might even land here at Aileron, for example, and at the right time of year, when everyone agrees that it's the right time to go ahead, and go to each property and start doing some mitigation works via the aerial plan burning poster at the back. So that's what our role will be, is to help the stakeholders identify the areas they want to treat. I guess help them prioritise, because one station might decide, yeah, we want to burn here, here and here, but their neighbour might want to burn there, there and there, and by the neighbour burning there, it might not mean that this station needs to burn in that location. So we'll look at the whole landscape to work out where the most strategic, best bang for buck is, I guess, to help stop these big fires. Now, I'm not sure how many people have seen this video, but it runs for a minute or so. So this is the 2011 fires from NAFI, and down the, is that pointer?
Doesn't work.
No, not at all.
No batteries. Anyone got anything no batteries?
Down this side here are the months of the year, and all the colours you can see appearing on the screen are fires and or burns. So we're now down to May. So there's a bit of activity already starting in Central Australia. We're now into June. The top end's probably in their fire season right now, so that's pretty typical for the top end. Now into July. And then watch what happens in August, is when our bad fire season started in 2011. And September. And October. November. And December. So for those that were around, what this doesn't show is January, February and March for Central Australia, and in that time another 10 to 15% of the landscape burned. All right, so what that equates to for many stakeholders was 50, 60, 70, 80% or more of their the land that they manage. Oh, thank you.
It's the bottom one.
Beautiful, cheers. It equated to about 50, 60, 70, 80% of their property that was impacted by wildfire. So I don't think there's anyone in the room, especially after the talks in the last couple of days, and for those land managers that were around at that time, I don't think that's really an acceptable level. So to me, we need to increase the amount of planned burning that we do in that season leading up to the bad fire season. So I think we'll keep moving to the next slide. So from the regional subplan point of view, we'll also look at readiness and response. Now what I mean by that is one of the key recommendations was that Central Australia wasn't ready, wasn't prepared for the fire season. So I'll be putting together with my team a plan for Central Australia and a plan for each sub-region that will indicate the stakeholders in the sub-region, communication plans ready to go, control and coordination processes. So The land manager is responsible for the fire when it first takes place, and many of those fires will be controlled by the land manager. But when that fire gets too big, they'll send out a distress call, and we can then come in and take over control of that fire and help coordinate. So when you look at that animation of the fires that happened in 2011, across that huge landscape, that's where the coordination is going to come in to ensure that where we can, we support each sub-region in dealing with the fires that they have. So in a really simplistic way of looking at things, we would have 14 people, one that would go to each sub-region, one that would go to each police station in the sub-region, and we'll set up a communication plan where all of the stakeholders that are impacted would be reporting in daily to that police station, and the police station would be reporting into the controller who'd be in our office down in Alice Springs. And again, we'd have a complete resource list, you know, how many people are available, how many graders, loaders, dozers, etc. And on top of that, we'll do some planning around bringing in resources from interstate. A comment made to me a month or so ago was, in inverted commas, we wasted $2 million on fighting the fires in 2011 with all the resources that came in from interstate. So if we haven't done the pre-planning with our interstate colleagues to say, when we put up the white flag, can you send us these resources? We want to make sure that they send the right skills, in the right vehicles, with the right communications, etc., rather than just me calling up a colleague in South Australia on the 1st of September saying, oh, have you got some resources you can send us? So we'll send out to them a template of the type of resource we want. Then we'll make sure that when we get them in, that we put all their vehicles on a truck and get the truck to go into Alice Springs Airport or go into Tennant Creek Airport, wherever it might be, and the truck drops their vehicles there. They come in the next day, pick up their vehicles, and then Avon Police Station or Avon District, Avon sub-regions ask for a team. They'd be sent down there to a particular station or roadhouse or wherever we're going to accommodate them, and off the next day they're sent to a station and they work for that station on that fire. So we'll do all that work to make sure that happens. Property fire management plans. One of our key strategic deliverables is for every property to have a fire management plan. Now, some properties, it'll be all up here in the head. It's not written down, doesn't need to be. They know what they do. In its simplest form, some properties say, yep, this is what I do. I don't need to do any burning because I know the fires all come from there. I put in a back burn, happy days. Others might be new to the region, may need some assistance. All I'm saying there is if you do need any assistance or advice, come to us. We're happy to sit down and map out a bit of a plan for the property. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all, and in fact I'd rather have a sub-region fire management plan than an individual property plan, because in this vast landscape I think we'd get better bang for buck. All the models that have been spoken about today, and no doubt during the rest of the day, come together with a Bushfires Fire Authorities Council or something like that, who put together this prediction of fire seasons. Of interest to me with this is two things. One, this year's, the blue areas. I've never seen the blue areas indicated before, but they're all the areas that were decimated by the 2020 fires. All right, that's the first thing that I took out of this map. Three things. The second thing is those red areas are potentially the bad areas this year for fire season wise. But the one of interest leading into 2020, when this came out in August, I hadn't paid too much attention to these in the past, but it was in January when I saw a presentation and someone put up this map and started talking about it, but there was something wrong. I couldn't work it out. And I realised that by that stage in 2020, we'd already had fires in a number of places around Australia, and all of the red bits that were predicted in August basically were all on fire at that time. That's how accurate it was, down to the point with Kangaroo Island was red, and Kangaroo Island, as we all know, went up. So This is a pretty good predictor of where Australians can expect to see bad fire seasons this year. Just very quickly, training. I know there hasn't been any need for training over the past 5 or 6 years, but if this rain keeps falling, then I'm starting to hear whispers around the track from pastoralists that will require some training. I have tailored as best I can the training that we do to the Central Australian landscape. So be assured that when we come out, we're not going to teach you about hazardous chemicals and fire extinguishers and all that stuff we used to teach in the past. About a day and 10 to 20 people and a small patch of grass that you'll allow me to burn. I'm not going to cover this in any detail, but if you go to the next slide, keep going. Next. One more. Oh, back. When we talk about planned burning, there's 4 factors that affect planned burning, and again, is fuel, weather, topography, but also lighting pattern. And all I'm going to say about that is, again, if you'd like some information, I can deliver it in half an hour to you when we come around and visit. If you want to talk about lighting techniques and lighting patterns, more than happy to do so. We'll just flick through. Just here, ignition patterns. Unless the person using a drip torch is well disciplined, they will click invariably over light. So here's a person down here, just literally lighting here with an upslope, and we just don't need to see that fire behaviour. And just using matches in that instance and putting them 150 metres apart is going to achieve the same result, but a lot less intense. Keep going. Aerial ignition, we can do a lot of area at the right time of year, either from a helicopter or a fixed wing. Keep going. The plane will work out a lot cheaper, we can fly a lot longer, we can have multiple land managers on board, so we can go from one property to the next. So my idea would be fly over a property, maybe even just whack half a dozen incendiaries into a part, then fly over to the next property, drop half a dozen, fly to the next property, drop half a dozen, come in and land, have a cuppa, and then go back up an hour later, see what those half a dozen balls did, and then work out from there how many more we want to put in. Keep going. Keep going. Won't play the video, keep going. Keep going, yep. Keep going. Just with lighting patterns, adjust, keep monitoring rates of spread, strip versus spot ignition, be flexible, and inappropriate lighting patterns are the result of most fires, burn escapes. Keep going. Yep. You can always put more fire in, is my motto. So start off with a match and just see what that match does. If you think that's not good, then put it out and come back another day. If the match goes out, throw another one in. If the match goes out again, throw another one in. By that stage, grab the drip torch off the back of the truck and try 5 metres of drip torch line and just keep adding it until you get what you're after. But in general, if we can burn less than 30 degrees C, relative humidity greater than 20%, and winds less than 15, then you're probably not going to have too many issues. The issue we're going to have is when we're putting in backburns to stop fires, we're not going to have those conditions, so therefore careful lighting techniques will help reduce any spot overs from that work. At any time, if you can use spot ignition over line ignition, it's a lot safer. Sorry, keep going. So key messages with your burning, make sure you're notifying all your neighbours. Please keep us updated. So even though people out in the wider landscape don't need to let us know, we really appreciate if they do. It just saves if a member of the public calls 000, we spend half an hour to an hour trying to work out, is it a planned burn or is it a fire? The next 12 months is potentially going to provide lots of opportunities for planned burning, and that's great for 2 reasons. One, we'll reduce the fuel in the landscape and put in these strategic breaks. More importantly, it will give your staff the opportunity to become familiar with fire again. Given our fire seasons are greater than 10 years apart, we lose those skills. So again, feel free to give us a call. We need to see fire behaviour in the landscape as well, because the last 2.5 years, it's only been the last 6 months that we've actually seen fire. So for us, it's great too. There's my contact details, and I think that's it. Yeah.